To track news out of the NFL, where the league has announced Thursday night that the Bills-Bengals Week 17 game will not be resumed and has been officially canceled. As a result, a neutral site would be considered for the AFC Championship game based off a number of contingencies surrounding Week 18 results and the ultimate teams facing off in the AFC title game. Here's a look at some of that information, and we'll try and take you through it. The Chiefs and the Bills, if they're both to win in Week 18, an AFC title game would be at a neutral site if the Chiefs do meet the Bills in the AFC title game. Chiefs win and Bills lose in Week 18. The AFC title game will be in Kansas City. If the Chiefs lose, the Bills win. The AFC title game will be in Buffalo as well, and that is based off of the Chiefs and the Bills meeting in the AFC title game. There is one contingency you do not see on your screen, and that is if Kansas City and Buffalo both lose in Week 18, Cincinnati wins. That means a Cincinnati-Kansas City or Buffalo-Cincinnati AFC title game would also be held at a neutral site. And for more, we turn to CBS lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones to try and help make sense of it all. JJ, unprecedented situation here, comes with hefty contingencies as we just took a look at. How should we expect this proposal to be received by league owners on Friday? It is just a proposal at this stance, specifically those league owners in the AFC playoff picture.
Well, Joe, first of all, congratulations on getting through all those contingencies. That was really impressive. There are a number of contingencies, and they are very confusing, and I hope that you all have studied very well to understand what is exactly happening. This proposal is going to be rubber stamped. It is going to be accepted by the NFL owners. This was something that had been considered at the NFL league office for really the last, I don't know if it's been 36 hours or so, let's call it a day and a half. And then it went to the competition committee around 6 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. And then that's where they were able to go through all the permutations. Listen, the NFL and executives there understood that there's not going to be a perfect system. They've worked very hard on this 16 and 17 game schedule, on their division schedule, on the playoff seedings, on everything that goes into it. And so when there is a sort of stick that's thrown into the bicycle wheel that throws everything off, not just for all 32 teams, but for 2 of the 30 or for 2 or 3 of the playoff teams, that you are going to have to make adjustments, and those adjustments will ultimately equal something that is not competitively equal for all the teams involved and everything that could have happened. That's what we understand and understood took place there. And so what the NFL attempted to do in this situation was to make it as equal as possible. I have to say, having pored over the rule book, having talked with any number of league executives, any number of NFL team executives over the past couple of days, trying to figure out what the league would do in this scenario, that what made the most sense was not playing this game. It was obvious that you were going to cancel this game, and the league decided to cancel it rather than call it a tie, because it ultimately didn't change anything for the playoff scenarios for all the teams that were involved. If you gave Cincinnati, if you gave Buffalo a tie, it didn't change anything. And so there will be no official statistics from this game. That's an important point right here. This game is treated as though it never actually took place from an official record standpoint. But what the NFL ultimately decided was, we're going to cancel that game. 2 teams play 16 games. The rest of them play 17. And then with all of those contingencies, with all of those scenarios, if we get to the point where Kansas City and Buffalo have to face each other in the AFC title game, and they both won or they both lost this upcoming weekend, that will be in a neutral site. Your next question, Joe, I'm going to go ahead and anticipate it. You're going to ask me, where is that neutral site game? The NFL is still working through those potential scenarios. They do not know if it will take place in Indianapolis. They don't know if it would take place in New Orleans, for example, places that do not have games going on, that would have available hotel rooms. A number of logistics still have to be worked out. But if they have to break glass in case of emergency, that's what would take place.
Lots of contingencies. It is a vast understatement to call it an imperfect situation, and the response here is about as close to perfect I think that we can get to. What about the AFC North? Because this is an interesting situation here. It's been determined that the Bengals will be recognized as AFC North champions regardless of the outcome of Sunday's game against the Ravens, but that won't necessarily come along with the benefit of a home playoff game. Can you take us through that?
Not necessarily. The only way that the Bengals, as AFC North champions, do not have a home playoff game is if they are the 3 seed, and if the Baltimore Ravens are the 6 seed, and if if the Ravens win this weekend, and then they ultimately have to decide as the 3 and the 6, okay, well, while the Bengals we recognize as AFC North champions, what we're going to do is have a coin flip, and then it's a 50-50 proposition. At that point, if the Ravens win the coin flip, the game would be played at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. So that is the only scenario in which the Cincinnati Bengals do not have a home playoff game. If they're another seed, if they play someone else, that's okay. But if it's a 3 and a 6 and they lose the coin toss, that game would be played in Baltimore. And so that is sort of the risk that is involved. And if they lose that coin flip, then of course they would still be recognized as AFC North champions next year, and they would have to play the number 1 sort of divisional schedule, and they would lose that draft positioning. But that is the scenario where they wouldn't necessarily get the benefit.
And we would have to get across a couple major meridians there. That's the Ravens winning there in Week 18, and then it coming to a 6-3 matchup in which they would face again. We would flip that coin. You know, I'm sure a lot of ideas were bounced around, and in this situation, they've had to act quickly, concisely, and they've had to act with emotion out front as well with the situation that we're dealing with here with Damar Hamlin. What were some of the ideas left on the cutting room floor in your reporting? Were you made clear of anything that came to the table and was shot down, ideas that the league had been bouncing around?
Yeah, there was a report out there that there was talk of adding an 8th playoff team. That was never going to happen. That I can just go ahead and tell you that was never going to happen. There was talk out there that potentially what we were going to see was that we were going to see the playoff schedule move a week, that we were going to go ahead and get rid of that week between the championship game and the Super Bowl, sort of that week of the Pro Bowl. That also was never going to happen. The league did not at all want to do that. This game between the Bills and the Bengals was very certain to never be played again, to not be resumed. That became very clear midway through Tuesday. And so once that happened, the NFL chose the least disruptive path. And this is the least disruptive path, where you continue to play the Week 18 schedule as scheduled, and that you try to make the playoffs as equitable as possible. That's what the league has done with any number of contingencies that are in place. We still have to see where that neutral site game would ultimately take place 3 weeks from now, if that contingency is needed. But again, I would go ahead and pencil in Indianapolis, maybe even a New Orleans, perhaps. But those are the places that I would eye moving forward.
You know, it's been a measured response by the league, and credit to those having to make these hard decisions right now. Anything indicate that past experience here through the pandemic has, in a way, prepared the league to be more flexible than maybe it would have been in the past?
I think so. I absolutely think so. I mean, we all lived it in 2020, right? Where you had those games that were moved, not just during the week, but we had those games that were moved weeks out in advance. We had teams that weren't even impacted by a potential outbreak within their team, but that it was for the betterment of everyone and for the league to get through the season. We got through 2020. Remember, we had an outbreak there at the end of the 2021 season where games had to be moved as well. And so that we have been in that situation before, I think that has really helped people understand that, hey, maybe this isn't going to be perfectly fair and equitable. Maybe this isn't what we all drawn up, what we all dreamed of, but ultimately we're all going to try our best. And if we do face this situation, please understand that we did do what we could to make this as fair and equitable as possible. And so I think that with that experience, I think comes a little bit more acceptance, perhaps. But ultimately, I got to commend the league, because this is, again, I spent a couple of days talking with folks and poring over the rule book and the standings. And frankly, while we don't know, we never will know what would have happened there in that game, had the Bills and Bengals played, I think that this is about as fair a solution as you could ultimately come up with, where if this happens, then this happens. And that's the best you could hope for.
That is our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. JJ, we appreciate your reporting as always. Keep that phone close. I surely will have questions.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.